Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm David.
And this is the Practical Guitarist Podcast.
The podcast for people who eat, sleep, and breathe guitar. The Practical Guitarist Podcast is brought to you by Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. Great Lakes Guitar Pickups provides fantasy tones at prices a practical guitarist will love. Featuring top-notch construction, attention to detail, and a fully custom product, if you can dream it, Great Lakes Guitar Pickups can probably build it. Follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. Are you a regular listener? Why not? David here reminding you of all the ways you can participate in the Practical Guitarist Podcast. Subscribe using your chosen podcast app. Review us on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or Google Play. Find our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Practical Guitarist or on Twitter as @PractGuitarist. Support the show. Merchandise is available. This episode of The Practical Guitarist was brought to you by Jim and Dave and featured arguments, problems recording, and other miscellaneous issues. Thanks for tuning in, and we've tried to deliver for you the best episode we could with what we had. So, from the bottom of our hearts, we apologize. Hi, Jim.
Hi, David.
So I had this whole gimmick worked out for this episode.
Yeah, so how's your moment of zen doing right now?
It's fucking doing terrible. So
you know that guy that wrote that review is gonna be
fuck him. Fuck him, okay? Fuck him. I don't care how you fuck him. He's a bag of dicks, okay? So we just went 48 minutes into an episode only to have the software that's recording the episode corrupt the file and crash. Okay, so now we're trying round 2. And my initial intention was to out a troll to begin with, and we'll talk about what a troll is because it's now come up in the Facebook group while the episode was going on. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I also want to. Now there's somebody vacuuming in the goddamn hallway. I hope that does not end up on the recording. I apologize if it does. So we got a review, right? And it is as follows. The person says, the title of the review is obnoxious. It's 1 star. It's by a person named Done With Heart on November 7th, 2018. He says, angry, annoying, obnoxious. That's one. The other dude is very bland and boring. One obnoxious and angry little man. One drab, dull, and boring little man. One podcast that should never waste your time.
Okay, so here's what we'd like you guys to do. Tell us who's obnoxious and who's boring.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We just want to know. I'm just trying to figure it out now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you listen to that one episode, what is it?
Song of
Our People.
Yeah, the Song of Our People. You're definitely the angry one.
Yeah, Song of My People starts with me screaming into the microphone. Okay. I think it's pretty clear with that one. But let the audience decide. But my point is, look, we out trolls. Okay, when you're going to send put a review on our podcast, please 2 things. Number 1, listen to more than 1 episode because this person has clearly only listened to 1 episode. Number 2, make sure it's constructive. I mean, come on. I don't care if you give us a 1-star review and you tell us what you don't like and how we could improve it. I'll be thrilled. I won't even read it on the show.
Right.
This is just ridiculous. This guy's just being a jerk to be a jerk. And okay, fine. I would read
any review on the show. I think that any review is good. I just think that this guy was just being a little, it doesn't help. It doesn't help if you were a person looking for a show and you saw something like that, what does it mean to you? I mean, it's just like this amp sucked.
So the gimmick, which I worked really hard for 48 minutes to pull off, was to be zen-like, to relax and be in tone.
He actually got to about 35 minutes.
Yeah, I got to about 35 minutes, and then Jim started talking about the recording industry. And no, You started talking about Apple Computer, and then I just fucking lost it. I was like,
and I didn't even say anything bad or good about Apple Computer.
No, and neither did I. That's the whole point. Like, I'm just saying, stop making out like it's a big fucking deal that somebody has an Apple Computer. Like, come on. So,
I'm sorry, guys, but
yeah.
So he went on this terrible rampage, and I really don't want to have to go through it again.
Yeah, we're not going to again. That's the gist of it.
I'm laughing because for 15 minutes that you don't have to listen to, he was going on about how people hate Apple people and Apple users and stuff. I'm like, I don't know anybody that hates someone that uses Apple,
I do. I do.
I guess,
I do, but well, I did bring up one point that I do want to talk about in this episode, and that is, but when people say things like, and I find this extremely offensive, especially having had two family members that fought against the son of a bitch.
Right.
I find this extremely offensive for someone to say PC is the master race. Does anybody know where that term comes from? Because I'm guaranteeing you probably do.
Well, considering the fact that some of that sounds racist. But I have a lot of very good friends who would really find that racist. Including myself, obviously. So I'm not sure that I'm crazy about the fact that somebody uses that term, but I hear it all the time in the gaming industry constantly. So I realize I have to remove myself from what the initial meaning or the initial tone of master race is. And just they're saying that if they're on a PC, they're better gamers than you. But we're a guitar podcast.
Yeah, so we're going to leave that one in the dust.
We're going to stay there.
But what we did talk about, which we'll get to later in the show, is we're going to talk a little bit about the change in landscape for the recording industry and distribution and sales, and how the digitization of music has really changed the landscape. This comes out of a conversation we're having, and we'll probably start with this part of it. Is that
did you guys want to hear Dave say that 3 times fast? Digitization.
Digitization.
Yes.
Digitization.
It's kind of hard.
I have a very smug fucking look on my face right now. Is that an ice cream truck, Jim?
No, that was my alarm. I have to call my father-in-law and wish him a happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Jim's father-in-law.
Yes. Let's not forget. So I'm saying it out here. Happy birthday. His name happens to be David.
Okay. My birthday will be shortly. So I will be 34 this year. One step closer to death.
I'm a lot closer than you are.
Yeah, I feel bad for you, Jim. It came up in the inner circle the other day. Ask me about it at the end of this episode. I'll bring it up.
Okay.
So, all right. So this all born out of a conversation that we were having about Nickelback.
Yes.
On our last episode, we talked about Nickelback. Jim was attempting to provoke me in my moment of zen, which he did so successfully, about Nickelback. And really the conversation stems from a couple of things. Number one, we were kind of laughing because in a Wikipedia article, they mentioned that Nickelback started with an $8,000 investment from Chad Kroger's father, that they proceeded to use $4,000 to record a record and the other $4,000 on shrooms. So, Jim, take it away. I guess we could start from there.
No, I just, all I was saying is that it comes down to the fact that these guys, number one, yes, they signed a contract. You're absolutely right. And in that contract, they agreed to take money and make albums. But they really, honestly, at the level they were, when a band first gets a recording contract, they don't have the ability to say, you're going to put, they may, not always, but may have some say in what the cover of the album looks like. But for the most part, a record deal, even when they got it, which was what, 2000, 2001?
No, I think it was before that. I think it was in like 99.
Yeah. They didn't really have any real say. It was like,
they had one album to their name, and it was. I don't think it was a major label release. I think it was basically a demo.
I thought it was.
And they got signed based off the EP. Yeah. And then that got re-released and redone, I think.
Correct, remastered and all that. So if you think, probably re-recorded. If you think about all that, then you can't really blame them for somebody going, they're a rock band. And what we were talking about at that point was pop music.
There's a distinct separation between Nickelback and being either a rock band or a pop band. And that's what this was born out of.
This is where, just like when I grew up, people would say, AC/DC's not metal. But you'd go into a record store and there was AC/DC in the metal.
Well, they're not a metal band, but they are a rock band.
But they were, but in 1976, 1975, when they first hit the States, really, for any, I mean, those of us who are AC/DC fans,
definitely a higher energy rock and roll band. Yeah. I mean,
right. That was around the time of, because they hadn't gotten Dirty Deeds over here.
Yeah. Our definitions of metal have definitely shifted since then.
Right. So AC/DC's, bigger stuff at that point was the If You Want Blood, You've Got It tour, which was touring the album, crap, Let There Be Rock.
Right.
So you've got Let There Be Rock and that, and people were like, oh, yeah, that's heavy metal. And of course, Deep Purple, that's heavy metal. And,
now I would consider this proto metal.
Yeah. And when you went to a record store, you had, ooh, that's going to hurt.
Damn, what the fuck?
Does that hurt?
No.
All right. So that was me adjusting the microphone.
That was me being annoying and angry.
Yeah. So, so when you go into a record store, I'd hear my friends all the time, well, that's not metal. And then you get later, oh, that's not metal. Oh, Judas Priest is now not metal? Okay. And then you'd have somebody saying, oh, well, now, and then we get subgenres of metal, just like we were talking about the other day. Black metal and dark metal. And
just anything metal you put in front of the word metal is now a genre, okay?
And I don't even understand the post-grunge and pre. I'm like,
post-grunge? What the fuck is that?
Yeah, exactly. There is a thing called post-grunge. And it's post-modern.
Like ambient showwave? Jim?
Yeah, I mean, is there post-disco? I mean, I just don't understand what but the fact is that when people walked into a record store back when we had record stores, I don't get it now. I got it back then. Understood it back then. When you walked into a record store, you kind of wanted to know because let me tell you something, you go walk into a Tower Records and it was like you're walking into Walmart, only it was all records. Now imagine
it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. So just like your groceries, one person might call pasta, and another person might call pasta
fucking noodles.
But that's still going to be in the same aisle. Some people might say pasta, oh, that's Italian food, so it's ethnic.
Yeah.
So, in other words, it's really what the hell. So when you walked into Tower Records, you had to know where the hell you were going to go because I was like, ooh, where's this band Iron Maiden? I'm going to have to find them. Oh, that's right there. They're heavy metal. There was metal. There was heavy metal. There was hard rock. There was acid rock. We had something called acid rock. I remember that. I think AC/DC was considered acid rock, at least by a lot of people. But the point is that everybody's got to put a genre on something. I don't think Nickelback went out and said, yeah, we're a rock band. They just say, hey, we're a band. This is our music. You like it? Well, fine. Buy it. We appreciate it. If you don't like it, so what? And I think that any band says that. I don't care what band it is. That could be Aerosmith. That could be Judas Priest. That could be, what's one of your new bands that you people like Inkelbird Humperdinck or something. I mean,
Mastodon.
Mastodon, Ghost. That's another one. I would have looked for Ghost in death metal. I never would have known that they were postmodern.
When you heard them, though, you were like, "This isn't metal." Like, what the hell is this?
I thought it was Styx trying to do metal. And I still, since they wear makeup and stuff, maybe it is Styx. But anyway, so that could be Tommy Shaw.
No, it's Tobias Forge.
No, the guy, Tommy Shaw can actually sing in tune. But anyway.
Wow. That's debatable. That's debatable.
Oh, I don't know.
I've seen him on various TV shows performing with Styx, and I'm kind of like, I don't understand this.
Yeah, Tommy Shaw can sing. He can definitely sing. But anyway, that's beside the point. The point that I'm getting at is that bands don't. Oftentimes, you'll hear bands in interviews, and somebody will say, "Yeah, in blah blah blah, this Rolling Stone called you this, or this one called you that," when it was referring to genres. They're like, I don't know how they got that genre. We just do our thing, man. And that's pretty much, I think, what every band does, no?
All right. So if we're gonna have this discussion, because this is different than the previous recording session, this discussion really is born out. I think when people started forming rock bands, that was kind of the way they looked at themselves. We're in a rock band. They didn't try to subgenreize themselves into something else, but they did make a very specific distinction about we're not classical music, we're definitely not jazz, and we're definitely not blues. So what are we? We're a rock band, right? When the industry, and I don't mean just the industry, but the record shops and everybody decides, okay, we're going to start genreizing everything, and so that people can have a easier way to find things. I think most artists were kind of offended by that because it's like we want our record to be right next to Led Zeppelin and AC/DC and Iron Maiden and all these other groups, right? So I think there was kind of an attitude where it was like, you can't categorize us, that kind of thing, which goes along with the whole rock and roll attitude in general, which is kind of like, fuck the system. We don't care what you think. Which I know punk rock likes to claim that they invented that, but it happened a long time before punk rock. So the reason I say this is because I know a lot of modern bands that I've worked with in some capacity or another wanted to very specifically select a genre so that they could have a guideline as to where they stopped and ended, right? So they would say, okay, we're art rock. And then they would go pull a bunch of art rock bands and be like, okay, so this is kind of what we sound like. And a lot of times it would be a decision derived to by like what their influences were. And so it was like, well, we're kind of like this and this and this, and these bands are, ambient chillwave. And so we're going to be an ambient chillwave band. I don't know that, and I think that really is not born out of, okay, so let's write some songs and then figure out what we are. I'm sure bands do it the other way, but a lot of the bands I've worked with, they were like, before we even put pen to paper to actually write a song, we decided what we were going to do, which is like, we're going to do this. And so this is the music that's born out of that. Now, Nickelback, I feel like, and based on that interview we watched, I feel like they very consciously decided to be a very open style of rock music that everyone could relate to, i.e. pop music, right? Which generally speaking, pop music is an amalgamation of anything that can be commoditized. And I know that that's a negative thing for a lot of people. I have my own negative connotation associated with it, but I don't demonize it. I listen to a lot of pop bands too. I listen to Prince and other artists that were pop in their day. Jimi Hendrix was a pop musician in his day. He was not seen as a rock musician by a lot of people. Rock music in general used to be called pop rock because it was popular rock music, right? So the reason why I pick fights with Nickelback and some of their contemporaries is because they were so self-aware that they could make money doing it that they targeted that. It was like, well, this is our job. This is what we're going to do as a job. And that's fine. I just think that making the statement that like, I don't really care about the music I write as long as it makes money is basically, it's commoditizing, but it's also losing integrity. And once you lose that artistic integrity where you really don't care about anything else other than how much money is going into your pocket, you don't care if you have any say in what your album cover art looks like. As long as it sells, you don't care. You don't care who the producer is as long as it sells. You don't care who, all of those little decisions that go into making something which I would consider art is something worth talking about in 100 years don't necessarily matter. And that's what I want to, I didn't point this out in the original discussion, but this is some food for thought, Jim. When Mozart wrote, many of his pieces were very popular, right? He is the counter argument to Bach, right? When Bach wrote, it's not really known how super popular his music was, right? And it took Mendelssohn to find his music in a church basement hundreds of years after his death, 400 years after his death, I believe. He found his music in the church basement and said, we should perform some of this stuff. You could see it was brilliant just by looking at the page and going, I don't understand this. Now we all look back and we go, wow, Bach was probably one of the most artistic composers of all time. Now, I digress because we don't have all the compositions from all the composers of his that were contemporary to him. And so it would be very difficult to make that statement. But we do know that Bach was brilliant, and maybe the other guys were brilliant at that time too. And the point is that Bach didn't lose his integrity. He did make money. He lived fairly well. He was not buried in a pauper's grave like Mozart was. Which is, again, that's an interesting counter argument here. Mozart went around kind of very publicly denouncing certain composers and things because like in the movie, he said things like too many notes. Who is he to decide that? And history judged him correct by a lot of standards, but at the same time, his contemporaries hated him, and so he was buried in a pauper's grave. He was poor when he died. Same thing with Beethoven, right? So my point is that in 500 years, we don't know how this landscape is going to be perceived. It's a very disjointed thing, and so we may not, to some extent, be able to determine what's art by looking around today. But I can say this: there are things I enjoy, and there's things I don't. I like my rock music a little rougher. I like it to be a little bit nasty and ugly. So for me, Nickelback is just a no. But for other people, obviously, they've sold millions of records. But the one thing I wanted to point out, because we didn't talk about it in the other episode, though, or the other version of this episode we were recording, you posted a video on Robert Jackson's T-shirt thing of them saying, they were like, oh, well, we made 10 million off those first 2 albums or whatever, and then the industry basically got pulled out from underneath us, and we did really well in the beginning, but it would be nice if we were doing better now. That's kind of what it seemed like to me.
No, the way I read it, the way I saw it was what they were saying is that they said they sold, what it was is one of their albums, and I don't know which one, has gone diamond.
10 times platinum, right?
And believe me, if you watch the interview, they know that they're like, I don't know how we got here, and we're afraid we're going to get the wool pulled out from under us because there's only so many artists that have sold 10 million. And I think they really are humbled by that. But that said, whether you believe that or not, whether anybody doesn't matter. The takeaway I got from it was they said, but now this is what they were saying. We made our money. We can do whatever we want. We can play whatever we want, and we can enjoy it. The unfortunate fact of the matter is, they said, what we're trying to, these bands that are, trying to say, hey, you should pay for your music, is that you want somebody to come out with a good album. You want somebody to create some new stuff. You want somebody to do some new things. You should be willing to pay for it. You don't walk in and walk out with something in your arms. And they said, you're not hurting us. We realize that. We made it. You taking a few dollars out of our pocket, that's not going to hurt us. But we're talking about the people that come after us. And I think that's the point that a lot of people miss when they get to that whole, I'm stealing from millionaires, so who cares? Well, not if you're. And I'm going to go a little bit further with that, because I'm going to take it into a more of a right now guitar realm. So Phil McKnight just posted a recording or a YouTube video where he was talking about this guitar that it's mayonnaise. It looks like it says mayonnaise, the name of the guitar, but it's mayonnaise, which is a relatively almost unheard of guitar, right? It's expensive. They are expensive only because they are guitars that are made to order. You get them kind of like any other custom guitar. You get them as you order them. They don't have them sitting in the store shelves, not all over the place. Well, anyway, so these guitars go for $3,000-$4,000, but there's not a lot of them. And you would think, there's no money in trying to fake those. Yep, they're faking them. He found a fake. He said, and here's how I know it's a fake. And he showed all the things that had to do with their fakery, because he said, I've never actually played one, but I did. And he showed outtakes from his interview with Mayonnaise. He showed how the build quality in those.
Yeah. So here's the thing. You're talking about fakes.
Yeah.
If you have any guitar and you want it faked, China will do it for you.
That's right.
They don't care. They don't care. They're not. It's not about like flooding the market with them. They're just making a one-off for some guy. That's the way they perceive it.
And they will come in, super cheap, but they will be super cheap. But my point is, stealing is stealing. And the fact is that what happened was the person that got this fake then turned around and sold it. And here's where the trick came. He said, hey, I'm going through a divorce and I got to sell this to be able to pay the old bag. So
they're playing games to get people to buy into it.
So I know this is $3,000 or $4,000 guitar, or whatever.
Yeah, just like that guitar that showed back up in my house, huh?
That's right. Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that, right? Because that was where your moment event Zen came from. And it's like, oh, so now it's a piece of crap. So then the person that's the buyer goes, wow, I'm only out a couple $100 on this guitar, and it's worth a lot of money. So if I put a little bit more money into it, I've got a real good deal. And then they find out they didn't get a good deal. They got had.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. These I know that's a little off the rails, but when people steal, they steal. And when you steal a guitar, when you're stealing the copyright of the guitar, and everybody's like, well, it's all right. Yeah, until it screws somebody over. And this is the same thing that we're talking about. It's not okay to steal music. But my point, coming back to Nickelback's thing is, and I don't want to get stuck on Nickelback because it's not just.
No, this isn't about Nickelback, really.
This is just about musicians and the fact that, look, I think Nickelback would have been just as happy writing music for, Neil Diamond or whatever you can.
Yeah, and that's what I actually how we were kind of arrived at the next part, which is that I mentioned that, hey, Nickelback, I would have zero problem with them if they were writing music for other people, and it was not being performed being performed in the exact same way. Because the song we were talking about was Sex, SEX, from Nickelback, and my comment was that it sounds like a Michael Jackson tune played by a metal band. And there's something wrong about the level of production in it, and it's very squeaky clean, and that's basically what prompted me to say, I like my rock a little bit.
For some people, that song is ugly, and that's the thing that it depends on your perspective.
Yeah,
if you listen to the lyrics and you read the lyrics, there is an ugly side.
Oh, sure, but actually, the song is like it's so well written in the the poppy style of like we're gonna have this very specific rhythm and. It's very calculated. It's super calculated to the point where it loses all spontaneity, and that's why I'm like,
let's take it out of Def Leppard and out of Nickelback and into Def Leppard.
That's a perfect example.
Perfect example. Are they a rock band or a pop band?
They are a pop band,
but they were
classified that way by the music retailers, but not by the listeners.
They were marketed as rock play.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, again, you got a band who their roots are in King Crimson and music like that. So it's
maybe. I mean, I could see that. Uriah Heep, yes. King Crimson is nothing like Uriah Heep.
Well, I'm just saying those are the people that they mention. And the thing is that, again, it's a band that everything was calculated. Why? Not because Def Leppard. If Def Leppard was left to their ways, they probably would have come up with a lot shittier music. Believe me, if you listen to their first album, it's a completely different thing.
Yeah, it's a rock album.
Yeah, you get that second album when
the producer basically takes over.
That's right. When High and Dry and John Mutt Lange got behind it, that was produced. Listen to AC/DC. The reason that there's such a division of people with Brian Johnson and Bon Scott was because Bon Scott only got one album with same producer, Mutt Lange. Mutt Lange produced for the Highway to Hell. But the rest of that stuff, that was all produced by...
And the thing is, like, I can stomach the AC/DC production even under Mutt Lange, because Mutt Lange seemed to know that those guys had to play the music roughly. when he got to it was almost like he was experimenting with Def Leppard. It was like, well, these guys are really capable of doing very, very refined rock music. So let's see what that sounds like. And yeah.
Okay, so that's what I was going to get to. So Mutt Lange was already producing AC/DC when it got around to Def Leppard.
Right.
I remember. So 79.
And who did he end with though? Let's point this out.
Def Leppard.
No.
He ended with Shania Twain.
Yeah. That's fucked up.
I mean, he's still probably doing more stuff, but
he is. But I mean, like Shania Twain
is the
massive artist,
right?
Yeah.
And so if you take the rawness of If You Want Blood, You've Got It, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, and those early AC/DC albums,
to Pyromania,
and then come up to I'm talking about staying with the same band. You get to Highway to Hell, a little more refined. John Mutt Lange still didn't have the power yet. But when that album broke, and then he came in and said, we're going to do something different with Back in Black.
I would not say that album was refined.
It was more refined than the early stuff.
Yeah, but it's nowhere near what he did with like Def Leppard and
and
Pyromania.
Oh no, that started with Back in Black. And with Back in Black, which has sold 20 million, I think it's double diamond. So when you look at Back in Black now, that thing gave everybody involved a whole lot of money and a whole lot of power. So when they came back into the studio, that was back when bands would release, especially
2 albums a year. Yeah.
An album, 2 albums a year. The next year we got For Those About to Rock. And if you listen to those 3 albums in a row, you can see it. You can see what he was getting ready to do with Def Leppard, who only came right after that, right after For Those About to Rock. That was when he was juggling the two, and he was trying to make an AC/DC out of Def Leppard in High and Dry. And then he said, you know what? No, we're going to do Pyromania, or I don't remember which came up first, Pyromania. But the fact is that those 2 next albums from Def Leppard, those are the 2 pinnacle albums.
Yeah, those are really the only 2 that anybody thinks about.
Exactly.
And they've continued down that path since. They've been a more pop band since.
That's right.
They got a taste of it, and they were like, okay, we want the money. And
exactly.
You know what? I get it. Like,
if somebody waved a bunch of money in front of me, because by the way, this did happen. I want to make this clear. This really did happen. So record company came up, offered a band I was in a lot of money. And they said, you got a tour and this, that, and the other thing. And so we sat down and we read through that paperwork with a fine-tooth comb. There were 5 of us. And here's what we decided: keep it. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. We did the album. We did it on our own dime, and we released it. And we made our money back, and it was. But the fact is that we didn't make a ton of money. Obviously,
without that big label distribution.
Right.
How long ago was that, Jim?
Oh, geez, 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's a different landscape today, though.
That's right, and it probably would be a different landscape as far as sales go.
That's right. Yeah. Because you would have social media to promote it.
Yeah, we would have had digital sales to go back it up. Really, back then, they were digital sales, but to get into it was still there were things that you had to get. There were tiers you had to meet. But to be honest, all we did was have CDs, and this was back when people bought CDs. Now you can't give a CD away. I wanted to talk about that here afterwards. But so we had CDs sitting in a box that our sound person would sell, and our manager. She would go around and sell, and our sound person would sell. And they did the bulk of our sales, and they would keep a small portion of that. But I'm going to be honest with you. We'd make say $1,000, $1,500 on a gig, and we may make another $500 on
the merch sales, right?
And a lot of times, on merch sales, we had stickers that we gave away if you bought a CD, you guys. But we had T-shirts and things like that. We had a tour T-shirt. Literally had the cities.
Yeah, and like 4 cities on the back.
No, I had like 20, 25.
Oh, okay.
It was pretty big. I mean, we toured New England and upstate New York. We
used to tour the Chicagoland area.
Yeah. We're playing Chicago. Yeah, that back on the back. I said the city.
Yeah, it's all the suburb names, right?
Yeah, Orange or whatever. So, sorry, folks. So what I was saying is sometimes that money looks good, and we talked about this before in the podcast, but you got to pay that money back, and there have been bands that did. I can't remember who I was reading the interview with. I want to say it was Def Leppard. They were talking about being on the road, and we had just been talking about Def Leppard being a pop band, blah blah blah. They're out there. They're like, oh wow, we've got the #1 record. We have 1 million records sold, and we're still living hand to mouth. Stopping McDonald's or whatever, and not even able to make our bills because the money hasn't trickled down to the band yet.
Right.
Movies are like that. Do you know why people fight for billing in movies? You know what billing means in a movie or in a play, right? What does that mean? Well, if you're top billing, what does that mean?
It means you get the most money out of the rest of the actors.
And you get paid.
But it also means you usually get a portion of dividends and other things too off film. So like, for example, in Halloween, the most recent one, of course, it was a $10 million budget, right? Jamie Lee Curtis, big actress. She's in the movie. She made, nobody knows exactly what she made, but they know that she got a portion of the proceeds of the film, and that was how they paid her. So for that movie to been $100 million movie, which it was, I think in its opening weekend of all things.
Yeah.
Crazy. She probably got $10 million for that.
Right. And then let's go back to Star Wars. Who was the only actor in the movie Star Wars who agreed to take royalties from the movie rather than get paid a lump sum for his part?
Probably Alec Guinness.
Alec Guinness.
Yeah.
Alec Guinness.
Because I know, I know who's the guy that played the military commander, the guy from the Hammer Dracula films. His name is
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. The guy that played Van Helsing, all the Hammer Dracula films. He would be the other guy that I would think that would be the one arguing for that too, because he'd been around the block. I mean, he'd done it a lot more.
Alec Guinness was the only one who took what do they call it? They don't call it royalties. It's another thing. Gosh darn it. I got it it came to me last time. But
the same thing. We were talking about before in the previous episode, like the way that people get paid for recording a lot of times is, like who actually performs on the track gets paid one. So there's 3 different unions, right? So there's the writers union. You get paid if you write the song. You get paid if you produce the song. You get paid if you perform on the song. And guess what? You also get paid separately if you sing on the song. So if you can bring that 4-factor thing together, you can get 4 shares of a song, which is why you will see producers who play bass on a song and sing the backup vocal, right? Yep. In addition to maybe even writing the song, but more importantly, being involved in the recording process. So, I mean, you really talk about 5 unions. There's those 4 unions, and then there's also the engineers union, which is another thing. So, just to put it in perspective, people don't understand how the business side of music works, and it's really easy to make a statement like you said when somebody gets an offer like that that you supposedly shouldn't refuse, and then you look it over really closely and you say, now that I understand the business side of this because I read the contract and now I understand based on the contract how things work, like $1 million ain't much, especially if you have to go on tour and pay a road crew. And that's why nowadays road crews, oftentimes it's like your buddy is your road crew. You want to go out on tour, you get that guy that knows how to set up your guitars every once in a while. And he's my tech now because he'll work for peanuts. It's that kind of thing. And it's sad unless you're involved in the road crew for a band like Nickelback or any of those larger bands, you're not really going to be able to make ends meet on that road crew.
No. Usually those road crews are the people that they're just as interested in how much weed and
I mean, in general, road crews
sex are going to get.
In general, road crews going back into like the old, the olden days of rock and roll. The whole idea behind the road crew was like, if you got off the road because said band was going off tour and they were going to go record or whatever, you were hitching a ride with whatever other band would take you because you didn't have money to have a residence.
That's right.
Their residence was the tour bus. Okay.
Yeah. By the way, those things are called residuals.
Oh, is that residual? Yeah, that's right.
But anyway, I knew it was started with an R, and I was like, there's a different name for it. It's not royalties. Royalties are different. But anyway, so the takeaway from it is that the money isn't just that. That upfront payment they give you, that's there, but then they start asking for that money back, and that's based on your album's performance. And so they put you up in a hotel, and you're like, oh man, look at this, they put us up in a mansion. You know who's paying the rent for that mansion? You are.
Yeah. So to go back to what Jim was talking about, we were talking about the era in which he received the band he was in received that offer. That was a different era. And so the way that the music industry operates now is really completely different. It started in the late 90s, actually right before Nickelback took hold, and some of the other groups of that generation. So there's Nickelback, Creed, and a couple other ones that were mega big bands. And what ended up happening was, so like you had Napster, right? The fallout from Napster, 97, 98, I would think it was around 98, 99-ish, is when the recording industry suddenly realized we don't have digital distribution, right? At the same time, Apple is walking around toting, we have the iPod, and we are putting together a music platform so that you can buy your music and put it on the device all in the same clearinghouse, right? Sounds like a good idea. So if you're the recording industry and Apple shows up at your door, and what's just happened? Napster has just happened, right? So you know that your music files that you can get from your computer can be traded, and there's no copy protection, and it's extremely easy to trade. So what's your initial reaction going to be to Apple? It's going to be a knee-jerk reaction. You're going to be like, exactly. We can't do this. So Apple decided.
The Beatles didn't.
Yeah, well, the Beatles didn't for a long time afterward.
AC/DC too, yeah.
Well, a lot of the big bands stayed out of it because they had more control over their distribution rights. So this goes back again to what we were talking about, where your deal, we were saying that like, oh, well, if you get offered a deal and you sell your soul, a lot of times they don't sell their soul. They're just willing to trust because they're going to make money, and they know that. So like AC/DC, they own their own distribution rights. They can take them wherever they want. And I think they actually own their own masters too, which different companies have different rules on that, and different bands have different clout, and so they can get things across that don't normally happen. So Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, the Beatles, Genesis, believe it or not, and a few other bands were very picky about where their music got posted. Now, so Apple's walking around and they're going, we got the service. We really need people to sign up. So what are they going to do? They go back to the record companies and they say, okay, we got DRM and digital rights management, right? So we have copy protection, and we're going to put this in all this music. You can sign the dotted line with us. You're going to get a portion of the proceeds that really is dick compared to what they used to get. But you think about it, you used to buy CDs $17 a pop, right? So between 15 and 17. And then right after iTunes broke, CDs dropped to $13 on average, and now they're like at 11, right? Yep. So what ended up happening was that these record companies said, okay, so there's DRM in place. We're at least going to get a portion of the proceeds. We're going to sign on the dotted line. If you didn't, you were vaporized almost immediately. So these labels that signed, they had kind of a bumpy road because they were not making the money they used to. Many of them folded. Right. And about 5 years after the deal was ratified, there was a window in there for contract renegotiation, and Apple went back and they said, okay, we're upping the sound quality of our music. That's good for consumers, right? And of course, it's probably also good for the recording industry because now you can say, all right, our music is higher quality through the service. And then they said, oh, yeah, and by the way, we did two things that you didn't realize. Number one is we could authorize your music on 5 different devices. So people have been sharing it the whole time, and we just kept it on the down low. So it's not that many people. So the sharing didn't get out of control. Oh, yeah. And as part of this new contract, you're going to have to release your music without DRM. And they lost their fucking minds. The recording industry at first was like, what? Are you kidding me? That was the natural reaction of a recording executive at that time.
Yeah, but who had who was trying to create their own little world?
Oh yeah, the recording industry did.
Sony. Remember?
Yeah,
Sony had, and I'll tell you right now,
they got fucked because of their class action lawsuit when they had those red CDs. that destroyed people's computers when you tried to rip the music. Yeah, that's a legit thing. And they had a class action lawsuit, and they lost their fucking shirt.
Yes,
and that was the beginning of Sony starting to get their ass kicked because the only profitable thing at Sony right now is their video gaming division.
You could not touch Sony. That's right. You could not touch Sony's music. I didn't want any of it. And then if you used a Zune, remember Microsoft? So Microsoft played ball with those distributors, they were distributors that with the record companies, and so they put DRM on stuff. So you'd buy something, then you'd buy a new Zune or a new computer, and you couldn't get the music to play.
So the Zune thing was so the other model, like the recording industry was looking at other people who were doing other models, and they wanted to cast their lot with them. But the problem is Apple got to them first. Okay. Nobody wanted to rent music. It just didn't make any sense. And 99 cents a song from Apple, it didn't make sense to rent music and these subscriptions were not cheap in the beginning. They were like $25 and $30 a piece.
Yeah.
So I at one point had a Windows music subscription or whatever they called it. And I've had another one since. I had Xbox Music. The point is that none of these other services were able to make it, right? Now, there are competitor services to iTunes now. I would say the people... So the iTunes service went hand in hand with the iPod, right? And as the iPod dwindled and the iPhone started to come in, other services started to take hold. This is how we get our Spotify. This is how we got... what's the other one? There's another...
starts with a P.
Pandora. Okay, so Pandora.
I don't have a Pandora account either.
This is how. Neither do I. And this is how we get our, our other services that crop up, right? Because so what happens? The Android world. Now, bear in mind, while all this is going on, there's still probably half the people, maybe 3/4 of the people in this country are still ripping music off the internet. They're still buying music illegally, right? So these other companies like Samsung,
downloading it illegally, they wouldn't be buying it illegally.
Not buying it, stealing it, stealing it. Okay, not buying it.
I have an Android, by the way.
So a lot of these people, they learn about BitTorrent and other things and faster ways to get this stuff illegally. And this still goes on today. I mean, I know people right now who don't have a Pandora or Spotify account who are downloading music illegally. At the same time, shame on you, by the way, if you're doing that.
Right.
At the same time, Apple makes this plea in 2005-ish to, hey, let's strip DRM, and the music companies initially don't want to do it, and then Apple says, well, you're going to have to if you want to sign with us and continue to sell music. And they looked at their prospects and the other services that they were currently championing, Rhapsody and Napster,
Rhapsody
service,
and
they went, we have no choice because if we don't do this, we're going to lose. And the companies that didn't folded. And you remember how quickly after that agreement was signed that the Beatles came on board and they opened negotiations because it wasn't like an immediate thing, but like you heard rumors, the Beatles is now, the Beatles, whoever owned the rights at that point, I forget who it was, I think it was a BMI or something like that, are now negotiating with Apple to bring their music to the platform. And then Led Zeppelin followed suit, and Genesis got most of their music up there. There's still some gray area stuff that's owned by another company that's not on there. And even AC/DC eventually came around.
AC/DC was so adamant that their music was not going to be distributed digitally that they were one of the last bands to also go.
The truth was, by the time they actually made a decision, it made them look like dinosaurs. And their last album, what was the one that came out exclusively through Walmart for purchase? That shows you what dinosaurs they were, because at that point, like, who would only distribute their record through Walmart? I thought it was ridiculous when Guns N' Roses decided that they were only going to release Chinese Democracy through Best Buy. But then it made sense because Chinese Democracy was such an expensive record that they knew that they had to get somebody to pay for the cost.
So Walmart was doing that. Walmart had Sony was still fighting the fight. So Walmart got a lot of bands that they typically wouldn't have gotten. And, only recently Walmart's now saying, I think it's Best Buy is doing it, and Walmart's following suit. You won't find CDs in Walmart or Best Buy.
You can actually download music through Walmart right now, and Best Buy as well.
I want to get through this. So what Walmart did was they got in bed with Sony, and so they got their big names. So they had exclusivity to AC/DC. They also had exclusivity to Garth Brooks, because Garth Brooks was still big at that time. They had Kiss. I don't know if you remember when Kiss's album came out not too long ago, that they had an exclusive contract with them. So the fact is that Walmart was trying to keep their store alive and not the store, but their music section alive, and it wasn't going to happen, because the truth is, and tell us in the group, how many people have a computer with a CD in it anymore?
Yeah,
drive.
So, you basically just said where I was heading is that media is dead at this point. Like physical media, right? It's dead. And we were talking in the previous recording session right before we got cut off. We were talking about how the film industry they're in the same boat right now that music was 10 years ago, and they still can't figure out what to do.
No, they can't.
This really boils down to, and it speaks to a bigger issue that we have in our country, in the United States specifically, of we have leaders both in the industry and government who do not understand how anything technology works. They don't. We literally net neutrality.
I work for them.
If you have it, and this is a parallel to the show. I realize this is not on topic, but I think it's really important that people read this. If you haven't read as to why net neutrality happened the way it did, that the whole discussion in Congress, they literally had the ISPs, the internet service providers, AT&T and all the different companies, telling them that they were creating the content on the internet, and they listened. That's what happened.
That was giving the all right. I'm gonna take us off on this tangent. That was giving what is it, the fox in the henhouse? Put the fox in charge of the henhouse.
That's exactly what they did.
Because now what they can do, and folks, I see it already on Cox. They can choke your streams. So I pay for Gigablast. So I've got gigabit Ethernet. I've got gigabit Ethernet. Okay, it's only one way, because obviously they try to keep
download upload is not concentric, right?
Blah blah blah. It's not yet. Anyway, because you wouldn't need gigabit if you were an everyday person. Even a small business doesn't need gigabit for that. But anyway, this is what. So, so Cox, I've got gigabit Ethernet, and yet I've got like a 10 or 15 second delay on a lot of YouTubes. You know why? Because they don't want me to use YouTube. They still want me to. They still call me. Don't you want television? No.
Yes.
No, I don't want to. I don't even know what's on TV.
You don't want television, but they think you do.
But they live in the 40s. They live way back in the 2000s, the early 2000s, when television was still big.
It's going to be like that scene in
we wanted
Back to the Future.
Yeah.
You have to use your hands?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the truth of the matter is, we've already got the TVs that are as big as the Back of the Future thing, right? So,
yeah.
What we have failed to recognize, or not we as consumers, the cable companies, the music companies, the movie companies have failed to recognize, and novel companies now have failed to recognize, is we don't want it. We don't want it. And more and more books. I have an Audible account. So my books are now on Audible. But damn it, I wish sometimes, believe it or not, sometimes I just want to be able to read. Because I want to know that when I close my eyes, the input has quit.
Yeah.
But but anyway, I've got an Audible account. I've got when it comes to music, I have YouTube Premium. So with that comes YouTube Music. So anything that's on YouTube I can listen to. And they have a deal too. So and that's all included in my YouTube Premium, by the way. So for the same thing you're paying $15 a month or so, I have 5 family members that have unlimited use of that on Google accounts. Then, and I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm not. I'm definitely not. As far as so that covers me there. I have Netflix, and I'm about to get rid of Hulu because Hulu is like a cable company. They want me to buy television before I can get multiple screens.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Hulu. Stick it up your ass. I play Netflix. I get multiple screens for like, I don't know, 12.
Yeah, it's like $13 or $14 a month. You get 4K video and multiple displays.
Exactly.
3D content and everything else. Netflix doesn't care because they know you're just buying this subscription.
Right. And lastly, until this ends, I buy my movies. I go to the store. I buy the movie. It has a little digital code in it. I stick it in iTunes and I stick it in Vudu. And I have it in both.
Yeah, Vudu is so.
Boom.
Vudu
and that's
is
the one you were. The other one,
isn't it?
Yes, that's ultraviolet.
Yeah.
But I have it in both, David.
No, I know. I'm just laughing because I know that at some point they're going to pull the plug on ultraviolet.
So if I pull, maybe, but they can't take away my movies.
Right.
But they can take away the ability to make more.
Yeah, they can take away your digital copy. They just can't take away your
physical movie.
Physical copy.
And so, the point is, as I sat and watched basketball last night, right? So, you know that because I put it on my on my page on.
No,
Facebook.
I actually didn't see it.
I watched it two nights. I watched one half and watched the other. Nobody wants a DVR anymore. Nobody wants another fucking box in their house.
You don't need it.
But that's what the cable company thinks you want.
No, that's what the cable company needs to sell you. They know you don't want it.
And now
their time is limited.
That's right. And now the companies and Scientific Atlanta knows that too, because Scientific Atlanta's out there going, whoa, we build cable boxes. You don't need them anymore. And so Sci Atlanta's going, oh shit, we weren't doing a very good job with our modems before.
Nobody did R&D.
Nope.
Nobody.
Nope.
Because they figured it was just going to stay that way forever. It's just like the recording industry.
When I first got a job, when I left the Navy, I started out as a government contractor. That's beside the point. When I got my first real civilian job, when I went over to work for Bell Atlantic, somebody said to me, everybody's always going to need dial tone, Jim. No, we don't.
No, we don't.
We're only, let's say I retired in 20 years in the future. I actually started working as a government contractor 20 years ago, November. So next year, it will have been 20 years when somebody said to me, everybody will always need dial tone.
Yeah, it only took 20 years to get rid of it.
Wrong.
Not even 20. It took 3 or something.
And even back then, we were asking, why do we still support payphones? And that was 99.
Yeah.
And you were still walking around with a bag phone, most people.
Yeah.
And so it was only a couple years later, and everybody had to have the. And I thought it was the funniest thing because all of a sudden cell phones were getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, the StarTech phone, and then followed by the Razor.
And then we got down to the Razor, and then it was like, ooh, I had a Motorola Razor. And then somebody walks in and they go, I've got an iPhone. Yeah. And I went, what the fuck is that?
And then everybody lost their fucking mind.
And everybody. And you know what I saw right after I saw the iPhone? Chinese knockoffs. My uncle said, yep, I've got an iPhone too. It's not an iPhone. It doesn't run iOS.
What OS does that even have on it?
It doesn't even have one. But it looked like an iPhone. And, so right along with it, we get the Chinese knockoffs. Comes full circle right there, right? So,
yeah. But bring it back to music. So we had this distinct change in the industry. And to your point, your deal for a lot of artists means nothing now because you can self-promote and self-produce and with very little investment financially and put a product out there. And if it's good and it gets picked up by some YouTuber or something and they use it as background music on their channel, you're getting paid.
So I think a separate discussion we should talk about another day is just that. How do you convince people? Because I have some folks, I wouldn't listen to their stuff if they were the greatest freaking musician on earth. You know why? Because every effing day I do not want to see your fucking email or your fucking post to my fucking page every day. Why are you doing this?
But Jim,
if I want to listen to it, I'll fucking listen to it. You don't need to tell me every day that
I'm not gonna out people from our group, but we've had a couple people in the group that we've had to silence because they wanna self-promote in the Practical Guitarist podcast group. This kind of goes back to the discussion we had earlier about, people in the group and things like that. Yep.
It's okay to self-promote.
It's okay. Participate in the group. Be a genuine human being and then self-promote. Don't just time. Right. Don't do it every fucking day because I'll ban your ass.
Yeah, it's like, I get it. You got a YouTube channel. You got a new video out this week. That's fine. But if you never do anything but promote your video channel, we're gonna sign.
Yeah, or send it. At the very minimum, talk to us before you do it.
Say, hey man, what's up?
But
Ed, you're just a machine. You're just an ad machine, and we don't need ad machines.
Yeah. So to go back. So self-promotion is one thing, right? It's a big part of that. But I think a lot of people think, oh, well, if I just self-promote, I'm going to suddenly have this big hit, and people are actually going to download my record. Look, no, I know a guy who has a 30,000 listener podcast or some crazy shit like that, and he's talked about his record on the podcast, and he makes like $60 a year off of his record, which should tell you right there. Going on Facebook and just plastering your name everywhere is not what you need to do. What you need to do is get your music featured somewhere. And that's how you build that following.
You've also got to write good music. I mean,
that's the other thing. Just because you write shit, doesn't mean that everybody's going to jump on board.
Right.
And that's ultimately it. So it wasn't that way 15 years ago when a band who got signed because they were, in a lot of cases, easily controllable, suddenly they're just saying everything they make is great, and all the radio stations have to play it because they're all owned by the same damn company.
That's right.
At the end of the day, the whole public doesn't know any better about what they're listening to. It's not that way anymore. And I'm so proud to say that because I think people now have a choice. That's how you have bands like Neon Indian and all these crazy like little bands that everybody knows about, that everybody in certain circles knows about, that are being successful. Now, the bar of success is very, very different, Jim.
Yes,
than it used
absolutely.
to be. So,
absolutely. But you know what? If you can put food on the table,
live comfortably, live middle class, consider yourself successful.
I think that's successful. If you can. Here's the thing. So we were talking about this during our break there, and we were talking about the fact that there were people who got millions of dollar record contracts who are now washing dishes. So you cannot say, "Hey, I got millions of dollars and now I'm going to be rich," because you might be just like we talked about with Meatloaf. You might be living in a trailer, scraping to make ends meet. The next, a couple of years later, that $1 million can go just like that when it comes to paying for a night after night because somebody's going to pay those roadies, somebody's got to pay that rider, somebody's got to get those lights set up,
you got it,
get the trusses out there, somebody's got to do all that work, and then hopefully sell enough sales to pay for that night, and then go on to the next one. And now it's all shifted. We've heard people bitching about ticket sales and ticket prices. So now the ticket price used to be, I saw Journey for like $7 when I was a kid. You're not going to get that now. You might get a lawn seat for, $25. And the fact is that we've got a completely different thing going on. And nobody did VIP sales. You just you wait it out back.
That's another bunch of horse shit. Huh? Look, they're trying to do anything they can to hang on to the money. You know the bands. You've seen them. You know there are some that are guilty of like, how can I exploit my fans so that I can continue to live the same insane, lavish lifestyle I did when every record I put out was 5 million sales.
And I snorted all that money.
Yes.
But here's the thing. As long as you can, you can sell some records, maybe do a couple of interviews here and there, a small tour, and maybe give lessons online or something.
I mean, you can make a living in music. You can.
You can do it. There are people who do.
Greg Koch is a perfect example. You think that guy's walking around with millions of dollars in his bank account?
Greg Koch. Here's a funny story about Greg Koch, and I'd love to get him on the show to tell us more about this. But his wife came home and said, I'm going to stop working. You need to make enough money to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who had been doing this stuff for years. He had worked for Fender. He had worked for Hal Leonard. He'd done all this other stuff. And all of a sudden, he's like, how do I make enough money to make ends meet? He had no idea. This is a guy who was in his 30s or 40s when it was finally, honey, you got to make ends meet. I'm going to sit at home with the kids now. And it was like, because I think he and I are about the same age.
Yeah, well, he's slightly younger than you, but yeah,
not that much. I think he's 50.
Yeah, he's like a couple of years younger than you. It's not.
So he was like in his 30s, mid to late 30s when.
And she's like, I can't continue to do this. Like, I have to stay with kids.
Yeah,
that's a perfect example, though. Is like, there's a guy who has managed to do it. Now, does anybody have the talent that Greg Koch does? I have not met very many people who could even touch. But that's my point. Not everybody is cut out to do this job.
No.
And we
not
all
everybody
need to
is Troy Grady or Greg.
For
Koch.
most of us, we are practical and we are hobbyists, and we understand that. And then there's like those people that are cut above, and then there's the people that are cut above them, and then there's those guys that actually do get to make a living doing it. And if you want to be those guys, we've talked about this on the show before. There's an episode called How to Get Good Guitar. There's a lot of things you can do, but you may not have the talent to do it.
That's why we interview these people, because, the truth of the matter is that, folks, I have a goal. And I'll tell you, in 5 years or so, I want to stop working for the government. And I want to start working in music. But that goal can't happen overnight. And I don't see it. I'm not going to write the next Mambo number 5. And so,
God, why would you want to?
Well, to make money.
Yeah.
Really?
There goes integrity.
Yeah, no. And that's what we were talking about right before we started back up is David has integrity because he doesn't care. I care. I do care. Well, he cares about his music. He doesn't care about the money. I care about the money. I care less about the music.
Trust me, I do care about the money, but
I would rather write the next Brown Eyed Girl, the next Mambo number 5, the next I Kissed a Girl, and I liked it. I would rather write that and be known for the rest of my life, laughed at. I would rather be Rebecca Black and laughed at for Friday for the rest of my life. But you know what? I'm cashing $10 million checks. Yep. I got this. I got this.
But see, there's a difference because you have to.
And she never had to go on tour.
You only have to live with yourself for like another 10 to 15 years. At that point,
die.
right. And so I would have to live with myself for hopefully the next 20 years at that point.
Hopefully more than that. Geez, you'll only be my age in 20 years.
I'm planning to die young. So
you guys do realize that David's young enough to be my kid.
Yeah, I'm 30. I'm 33. I'll be 34 on the 11th of December.
And I'm 54. I'm going to be 55 here shortly.
Yeah.
But the point is, I don't want to be 60 years old and continuing to go into an office every day. And so, yes, I do want to start. I've started breaking the thing for doing lessons. I've already made friends in the touring industry because, believe it or not, I just want to leave my house empty most of the time, which is why my guitars and my gear is scattered, because I don't want anything to be here stealable. They could steal this microphone and a couple of guitars. Most of these would go on the road with me if I went. So I don't want to be that person. I want to go out there and do that stuff. And so if somebody came to me and said, Jim, you know what? We heard that one song that you wrote in 1987 and we love it. We want to. You wrote when you were drunk? No. That was in 1981.
I'm just kidding.
82. That was 82. No, the one, I wrote an album. I wrote an entire album of songs solo, and I recorded it solo. This was back before the days of perfect pitch and all. Well, I shouldn't say perfect pitch correction.
That shit that Nickelback uses pitch correction.
Yeah, there's no pitch correction. There's nothing. So I wrote an album of songs. They were very derivative songs. If you listen to it, you would say, "Yep." He listened to a lot of Bob Seger.
That sounds like The Cure.
Billy Joel, and who else was I listening to? A lot of America and John Mellencamp and that stuff. It sounds exactly like John Mellencamp, Bob Seger, America and maybe a little Bruce Springsteen.
Wow, like there's one guy in that whole list of people that I actually enjoy listening to.
Yeah, and I hope it's not Springsteen. But,
no, it's not. It's not.
Good, because but anyway, the point is, it was derivative music, and I knew it, but it got some college airplay, and I used to play it, and I sold a few copies of a cassette. This was before the days of CDs. I sold some cassettes.
You still have the masters for that around?
Actually, a friend of mine does, and the fact is, I'd love to get it digitized.
Are they 2-inch tape?
It was 2-inch tape.
So you're gonna have it baked.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be. And the fact of the matter, I know. That's why, and nothing has happened with it. It's still sitting at a friend's house. His name is Jeff, and he actually lives out by you. Believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
He lives on that side of. Anyway, point is, I know better than to think that somebody's going to walk up to Jeff and go, "Hey, you know that guy had some hits that was played on ODU's, radio station for a while and had a couple of. We want to get his. I know better than to think. Maybe, but yeah.
Well,
and I might win the lottery next week. Of course, I'd have to buy a ticket.
But legitimately, so we talked about you said that I don't really care about money. That's not true. That's actually complete opposite. I think finding the right balance between being able to hold on to what makes you as well as making a bit of money on it. Now, I've always told people though, I'm not the guy that so if you give me $1 million, I'm probably the guy that's going to donate everything I don't use to charity. There's no point for me fucking having it. Look, you can only enjoy things so much. And I laugh because I see these guys I'm not saying Nickelback, but there are people out there that, have made $1 billion in music. Right. And it's like, they got all this money. And what do? They buy 5 fucking mansions, 40 Ferraris. It's like, how many fucking cars do you need?
Yeah.
How many cars are you going to drive? I just don't understand. Maybe it's because I'm a millennial, but it's just mind-boggling to me that somebody would look at that and go, man, that means I get to do this 30 times.
The truth is,
what?
The truth is, I want to sell my house, buy my house that I'm in. Don't care. Don't need a big house. Buy this little dinky postage stamp of a home that I'm in. And a car.
But I watched them.
I could literally pay the taxes on $1 million and still have what is taxes on $1 million? $450,000. Yeah. I would still have $500,000 after I got done buying what I wanted to buy.
Yeah. Well,
I don't have that much cost.
Do you remember the MTV? And I know MTV sucks, but do you remember MTV Cribs?
Yes.
I forget who it was, but I think it was POD or something like that. They went through the cribs of all the stars, and there were always these freaking fancy chateaus, and in LA and or in Beverly Hills, and then they went to POD or Lit or somebody like that, and they're literally living in a house on the end of some middle class street.
Yeah.
And those guys, guess what? Those guys still got all that money.
Yeah.
They're still sitting on millions of dollars, and they don't care. They don't have to do another thing every day in their life. So that's my biggest fear. Is if I was to write, and listen, it's not going to happen, people. I'm not that good a songwriter. But if I was going to write a big hit, and I was going to get all this money, my biggest fear is that I would have to repeat that hit.
That's everybody's biggest fear. They call it the sophomore slump when it comes to records. You get these. What a lot of people don't remember is you spend your whole life writing that first record. Your whole life.
Yeah, and then you have to do the second one in 3 weeks. You're like, what the hell am I doing now?
Oops. Yeah. Oops. How many bands?
Most bands are broken by that second record. You'll see lineup changes. You'll see bands that completely implode, never get to record 2. You'll see bands that get through record 2, but they never sound the same. You'll see, record 2 is what makes a band, not record 1.
I'm going to give you a band name you've probably never heard of, maybe. Kajagoogoo. So the band Kajagoogoo had a huge hit, but it was too late. The band lineup had changed by the time the hit made, and it was called Too Shy. And so here's
Familiar
this
with the song.
here's a song, you're too shy to shy, so the song comes out. Yes, it's a silly pop song, very silly pop song. But the band couldn't redo anything because
They didn't have the people
they didn't have
anymore.
the people. They're gone.
So,
They're gone.
classic example. But we've been recording for a really long time. There's going to be a lot of editing in this episode. So, with that, I've been David.
I've been Jim.
And we've been the Practical Guitarists.
Or Impractical this time.
Yeah, well, this is technical difficulty.